Hello and welcome to the True Crime Lounge. My name is Breezy, and today we're going to be talking about why we have 911. Um, so believe it or not, at one point in time, you could not directly call 911. So why is that exactly? Well, in order for that, basically, in layman's terms, you call this what you basically had placed this holder in, would connect you to that holder, and connect you to that holder. So, after the murder of Kitty Genovese, it changed all that completely. But before I get started on that, I want you to hit that like button. I want you to comment a random someone you want me to talk about next or a case that changed the law. And ring that bell for notifications. And also hit that subscribe button. So, why is the Kitty Genovese murder so impactful? Well, this murder happened in Queens, New York in 1964, and it's one of the most famous cases to come out of this New York City and into the national spotlight. What prevailed it wasn't the crime of the investigation, however, but it was the press coverage that alleged the murder had many witnesses who refused to come to Kitty Genevieve's defense. So, however, this has been disproved over time, but not before it became part of the accepted lore of the crime. So, what exactly is the Kitty Genevieve's murder? Well, she was returning home from work around 2:30 a.m. on March 13th, 1964, when she was approached by a man with a knife. She ran toward her apartment building a front door, but the man grabbed her and stabbed her while she screamed. A neighbor, Robert Moser, yelled at the window, let that girl alone," causing the attacker to flee. Genovese, seriously injured, crawled into the rear of her apartment out of the view of any possible witnesses. 10 minutes later, her attacker returned, stabbed her, raped her, and stole her money. She was found by her neighbor, Sophia Farah, who screamed for someone to call the police. Police arrived several minutes later. Genovese died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. The murder elicited a brief news item in the New York Times. So who was Kitty Genovese? Well, she was born Catherine Susan Genovese, but she went by Kitty, in Brooklyn, New York on July 7, 1935. Two parents, Vincent and Rachel Genovese. The oldest of five children, she was a graduate of Prospect Heights High School and remembered to be a very good student and voted a class cut-up her senior year. So following her graduation in 1953, her mother witnessed a murder on the streets which motivated the family to move to New Canaan, Connecticut. Genovese, however, remained in the city working as a secretary at the insurance company and working nights at Ev's 11 Hour, a bar in Hollis neighborhood of Queens, first as a bartender, then as a manager, prompting her to move to Queens. A decade later, Genovese met her girlfriend, Mary Ann Zolanko, in Greenwich Village nightclub. The two found a second-story apartment in New Gardens in Queens and considered a peaceful, safe area to live. So what about the investigation? Well, it was 4 a.m. when police knocked on the apartment door and informed Zolanko about the stabbing of Genovese's death. It was It wasn't until 7 a.m. that Detective Mitchell Singh arrived to question Zolanko, who was being consoled with liquor by neighbor Carl Ross. Singh found Ross intrusive to the questioning and arrested him for disorderly conduct. Singh also knew Genovese's body was discovered lying in the bottom of the stairs leading to Ross's apartment. Later, homicide detectives called John Carroll and Jerry Barnes arrived, grilled Zolanko on her relationship with Genovese. The questioning took an inappropriate turn, focusing on their sex life, and that lasted 6 hours. Much of the police questioning of the neighbors revealed a preoccupation with the gay lifestyle. Solanka was considered a suspect. So how was her murder solved? Well, later that week, police got a call about a suspected robbery. When police showed up, they found the television in the trunk of the suspect's car. The man, Winston Mosley, was arrested and taken into custody where he confessed to stealing appliances dozens at a time. Mosley drove a white Corvair, and this struck detectives John Targaglia, who remembered that some witnesses to Genevice's murder had reported seeing a white car. That was mentioned to Mosley, who said nothing, triggering that scene. So, what did he do? Well, Targaglia, I'm just butchered that name up, I'm sorry guys, called in detectives John Carroll and Mitchell Sang. They noticed scabs on Mosley's hand and accused him of killing Genovese. Mosley replied that he had confirmed information that only the murderer would know. So who was Winston Mosley? Well, Mosley had spotted Genovese at a traffic light while he was sat in the parked car and then followed her home. He had been driving around Queens looking for a victim but gave no motive for the attack. Mosley was married with 3 children and had no prior record, so later interrogations would have Mosley confess to several other rapes and 2 other murders. Those of Annie Mae Johnson and Barbara Kwolek. Mosley was sentenced to death on June 15, 1964. Where in 1967 it was reduced to a life sentence. He would later claim that a mobster executed Genovese and he was the getaway driver. Mosley said that he stated that he believes Mosley's son has stated that he believes Mosley attacked Genovese because she yelled racial slurs at him. Mosley died in jail March 28, 2016 at the age of 81. So, the New York Times covered this. So, what did they have to say about it? Well, on March 27, 1964, the New York Times ran an article. 37 who saw a murder didn't call the police, alleging that multiple neighbors heard or witnessed Genevieve's murder, but did nothing to help her. The report was prompted by a conversation between editor A.M. Rosenthal and Police Commissioner Michael Murphy, during which Murphy made a claim that was the basis for the article. He said the newspaper followed it up the next day with analysis speaking to several experts on the psychology of why people choose not to get involved. Later in that year, Rosendahl adapted the information into a book called 38 Witnesses, the Kenny Genovese Case. The New York Times coverage had been criticized for numerous factual errors and accused of contriving to a social phenomenon for a sensationalistic purpose. So, what's the bystander effect? Well, the bystander effect, this phenomenon was a phenomenon called the bystander effect or the Genovese syndrome, which attempts to explain why people witnessing a crime would not help the victim. According to psychologists Bibb Latany and John Darley, made their career studying the bystander effect and have shown in clinical experiments that witnesses are less likely to help out and help a crime victim if there is other witnesses. The more witnesses, the less likely one person will intervene. The bystander effect was used by the press as a parable of a morally bankrupt modern society losing its comparison for others, particularly in the cities. So, was the New York Times debunked? Well, Decades following the murder, a journalistic movement began to correct the misinformation perpetrated by New York Times stories. In 2004, Jim Rosenberger wrote an article for the Times debunking the claims of 1964 reporting. A 2007 article in The American Psychologist by Rachel Manning, Mark Levine, and Adam Alan Collins further deflates Rosendel's claims. So in 2015, Genevieve's younger brother Bill produced and narrated a documentary, The Witness, which lays out cases against the Times reporting in strong terms. I don't want to get involved. I didn't want to get involved. So only 2 neighbors have been shown to behave at the time of the murder in the same way the Times claimed 38 people did. One of those was Carl Ross. Intoxicated that night, Ross heard noise after deliberation, cracked open his door to investigate. He saw Genovese laying on the ground, still alive, attempting to speak, but then and Mosley stabbing her. He shut the door, called a friend, asked what to do. The friend said not to get involved. Well, Ross eventually climbed out of his window, went to the neighbor's apartment. He called the police here after hearing Sophie Farrar call for someone to do something. Ross's explanation, "I didn't want to get involved," became the famous rejoinder of the bystander effect. So, what was the impact of Kitty Genovese? Well, this led to the birth of 911. This is the reason we have a direct way to call 911. So, the murder of Kitty Genovese is credited as one of the biggest factors that pushed the emergency 911 system into place. After New York City officials joined the national effort, including involving officials in other cities, it became a national emergency number in 1968. Alright guys, there we have it. What shocked you the most? I am curious. What case should I talk about next? I love learning about new cases. I love especially cases that impacted the law because we don't get that very often and we don't hear it a lot of times. But yes, I will see y'all next time, and remember, check that merch shop down below, and y'all have a fabulous day.